The world was watching. Inside the massive arena, the stage was set for what the media had hyped as a meeting of titans. Banners hung from the rafters. The lights glared down like spotlights in a boxing ring, and thousands of people filled the seats. Cameras from over 20 countries were aimed at a simple setup: 2 chairs, 1 table, and microphones. It wasn't a fight in the traditional sense, but everyone knew it was going to be a battle. On one side was Keanu Reeves, known for his quiet humility, his thoughtful answers, and his ability to connect with people on a human level. On the other side, Sylvester Stallone, larger-than-life, sharp-witted, and never afraid to speak his mind. This wasn't supposed to be a rivalry. The event had been marketed as a joint appearance to discuss the state of Hollywood, the power of storytelling, and their personal journeys. But whispers backstage told a different story. People said Stallone had been vocal about not liking some of Keanu's recent public statements, especially his refusal to play safe during interviews. Others said Keanu wasn't too happy about some of Stallone's comments on the industry, which painted hope and kindness as weaknesses in a cutthroat world. The atmosphere was tense before they even walked out. Crew members kept glancing toward the dressing rooms, and there was a strange silence between the bursts of stage announcements. When Keanu finally stepped out, the crowd erupted in cheers. His calm walk and small smile drew people in instantly. A minute later, Stallone appeared, broad shoulders, confident stride, the kind of presence that filled the space. The applause was just as loud, but the energy felt different, more charged. The host, a veteran journalist, started with warm introductions. For the first 10 minutes, things stayed light. They swapped a few stories from their early days, laughed at awkward audition memories, and shared moments of gratitude for their fans. But then the tone shifted. Keanu, the host, said in recent interviews, "You've talked about kindness and empathy being the most important strengths a person can have of it in Hollywood. Some would say that sounds unrealistic. In fact, I heard Sylvester here might have a different take on that." Camera caught Stallone's faint smirk. "Look, I respect Keanu, but this is a tough world. You don't win battles with kindness. You win by being the strongest, by hitting back harder than you're hit." The audience reacted with a mix of claps and murmurs. All eyes turned to Keanu. He spoke slowly, his voice steady. "Strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how much you can take and still keep moving forward without losing yourself. Kindness isn't weakness. It's choosing not to let the world turn you cold." Stallone leaned forward slightly, his tone sharpening. "But if you go, soft people walk all over you. This business isn't about holding hands, it's about surviving." Keanu met his gaze. "Maybe surviving isn't enough. Maybe we should aim for something more like helping others survive too." The crowd was silent now, the tension between them unmistakable. The host, sensing the shift, tried to steer the conversation to safer ground, but it was clear the two men had drawn their lines. Still, there was no shouting, no insults. Only two opposing philosophies laid bare. It was the kind of clash people could feel in their bones, a rare moment of real conviction on a public stage. What neither man knew was that this was just the first spark. The world wouldn't stop talking about this moment and the forces behind. The scenes would soon turn it into something far bigger, pushing both of them into a confrontation that would test not only their beliefs, but their very sense of who they were. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the world was already dividing into two camps. Clips of the tense exchange between Keanu Reeves and Sylvester Stallone flooded social media. Headlines screamed everything from kindness versus strength, the battle of Hollywood legends, to Stallone schools Reeves on how the real world works. Hashtags like #TeamKeanu and #TeamStallone began trending, with millions of comments dissecting every word they had said. Marla, Keanu's assistant, stood in the kitchen with her phone in hand, scrolling through the chaos. "This is huge," she said, glancing at him. "But it's not just about the debate anymore. People are making it personal. Some are praising you as a voice of humanity. Others are mocking you as too soft for this world." Keanu poured tea calmly, though his mind was already running ahead. It was never about winning an argument, he said. It was about being honest.
Ow.
Before Marla could respond, her phone buzzed again. She frowned as she read the new email. Unexpected. Producer from World Forum Live. Just invited you and Stallone to appear together next week. They're calling it a follow-up. The definitive conversation on strength and kindness. Keanu gave a faint smile. Definitive. That's just their word for ratings. Marla's voice dropped. You know what this is? They're going to bait you both. Try to push one of you into saying something they can spin into a headline for weeks. Keanu took a slow sip of tea. Then I'll just tell the truth again. It's all I can do. But he wasn't naive. The first event had been organic, unplanned. This one would be crafted for spectacle. Meanwhile, halfway across town, Stallone sat in a quiet boxing gym, his hands wrapped in tape from a morning workout.
Hey.
His longtime friend and trainer, Frankie, tossed him a towel. They want you and Reeves back on stage, huh? Stallone grunted. Yeah, they're calling it a conversation, but it's going to be a fight. They'll want me to go hard, to make me look like the old school guy who doesn't. Get it? So, you gonna, Frankie asked? Stallone paused, his expression unreadable. Depends. Maybe he needs to hear that not everyone makes it out of this business alive if they stay soft. Maybe I'm the one to tell him. Back in Keanu's apartment, Marla's phone rang again. She answered, only to go pale. When she hung up, her voice was tight. That was someone from a private number. They said, I'm quoting, if Reeves shows up next week and keeps talking about kindness being stronger than force, it won't just be words that get hit. Keanu looked at her quietly, his face calm but his eyes sharpening. There. Trying to scare me off? And, Marla asked, he set his cup down. Then we definitely go. And we see who else is trying to control the conversation. What neither Keanu nor Stallone knew was that both had now been warned by voices they couldn't trace. Both had decided to show up anyway, and the stage that was being prepared for them would not be one they could simply walk away from unchanged. The night of the World Forum Live event had a different energy from the first meeting. The venue was larger, the lighting sharper, and the security presence far heavier than usual. Outside, a crowd had gathered, holding signs, some with messages of support, others mocking both men. Media vans lined the streets, their satellite dishes pointed skyward, ready to broadcast every second to millions of viewers. Keanu arrived early with Marla, moving quietly through the backstage corridors. He was wearing his usual understated black suit, but his eyes were alert, scanning the environment. Psst, Marla whispered, something's off. Too many people back here who aren't wearing crew badges. Keanu nodded, storing the observation without comment. Sylvester Stallone arrived 15 minutes later. He walked with a confident stride, but anyone who knew him well could see the edge in his movements, readiness for confrontation. The two men shook hands firmly. There was no hostility in the gesture, but there was an undeniable tension. A silent acknowledgement that this wasn't going to be a friendly chat, the host. A sharp-tongued media personality known for pushing guests into uncomfortable territory greeted them briefly before they went on stage. Remember, he said with a practiced smile, the audience wants honesty. Don't hold back. The moment they stepped into the lights, the audience erupted. Cheers, boos, and whistles mixed into a wall of sound. Keanu and Stallone sat across from each other, the host in the middle, flanked by a massive LED screen that displayed close-ups of their faces. The opening questions were harmless career highlights. Early challenges, what kept them motivated. But within minutes, the host went in for the hit. Keanu, he began. Last time you said strength is about how much you can take and still be kind. Sylvester, you said strength is about hitting back harder. Tonight millions are watching to see who's right. So, let's settle it. Stallone leaned forward first. Look, I respect Keanu, but I've seen too much to believe kindness wins in the real world. You try to stay soft, you get crushed. I learned that the hard way. Keanu kept his gaze steady, and I've seen people win battles without throwing a punch. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means refusing to become the thing you're fighting against. The host grinned, sensing the clash. So, if the world turns on you, you'd still choose kindness, even if it costs you everything? Keanu's answer was simple. Yes, crowd murmured, split down the middle. Stallone shook his head. That's where we're different. You can't help anyone if you're on the ground bleeding. Sometimes you have to fight back just to survive. Keanu's reply came without hesitation. But survival without humanity isn't living. It's just existing. Before the host could push further, the giant LED screen flickered. For a split second, it went black then. An image appeared that wasn't part of the program. It was a photo of Keanu and Stallone from years ago, digitally altered to make it look like they were standing with a shadowy group of people in a backroom deal. Words flashed across the image. The truth they don't want you to know. Gasps rippled through the audience. The host looked genuinely startled. Producers rushed onto the stage, and the screen abruptly went dark again. Keanu and Stallone exchanged a quick glance. There was no mistaking it. Someone had just hijacked the broadcast feed. Stallone's jaw tightened. Keanu leaned toward him slightly and said under his breath, "Whatever this is, it's not just about us anymore." The host tried to regain control, but the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The audience wasn't just watching a debate now. They were sensing something bigger, something hidden, unfolding right in front of them and behind the curtain. Someone was pulling strings neither man could yet see. This was only the beginning asterisk. The feed disruption lasted less than 10 seconds, but the damage was done. Whispers swept through the crowd and on social media. Clips of the altered image were already circulating with wild conspiracy theories. Backstage, chaos erupted. Crew members barked orders into headsets. Security staff hustled in and out of the control room, and the host's earpiece buzzed with urgent voices. But on stage, the lights stayed bright, the camera stayed rolling, and the audience's eyes were locked on Keanu and Stallone. The host tried to smooth things over. "Looks like we had a little technical hiccup there," he said with a forced laugh. Now back to Keanu interrupted, his tone calm but carrying weight. "You called this a conversation about strength and kindness. If someone out there is trying to twist the truth, maybe that's proof we need to have this conversation even more." A cheer went up from a section of the audience. Stallone's gaze shifted to the crowd, then back to Keanu. "You think whoever did that is just about truth?" "Nah, that was about control. Somebody's playing a bigger game here." The host, sensing the moment slipping away from him, tried to regain control. "Gentlemen, but Stallone leaned forward, his voice dropping into that unmistakable, gravelly tone. "No, let's talk about it. You get a disruption like that on a live global feed. That's not some random troll. That's organized. And when people start targeting your name, your face, they're telling you you've stepped somewhere they don't want you." The audience was silent now, leaning in. Keanu nodded slightly. "So the question is, why are they so afraid of two people talking about what really matters?" From the corner of his eye, Keanu caught movement near the side of the stage too. Men in dark suits, not part of the regular crew, whispering to each other as they scanned the audience. Marla, standing in the wings, noticed them too. She sent a quick text to Keanu's phone. "Those guys aren't network security. Careful." As the conversation on stage continued, the tension was palpable. Stallone shared a story about his early days, when studios tried to control not only his roles but his image, even feeding false rumors to the press to make him more marketable. "That was small time compared to this," Stallone said, gesturing toward the darkened screen. "Back then, they just wanted to make money. Now, they want to decide who's allowed to be heard." Keanu glanced toward the camera, speaking directly. "To viewers at home, strength isn't just about standing up when it's easy. It's about standing when someone's trying to push you down. Kindness isn't weakness. It's a choice not to play their game." A wave of applause rolled through the arena, but in the control room, a shadowy figure watched from the back wall, speaking quietly into a phone. "They're not taking the bait," the voice said. "We'll have to escalate." As the show wrapped and the lights dimmed, Keanu and Stallone shook hands in front of the crowd, both of them fully aware that the real confrontation hadn't happened yet. Whatever was coming next wouldn't be confined to a stage, and neither of them knew that. The next move would be public, calculated, and designed to pit them against each other in a way no one could ignore. This was only the beginning. 2 days after the World Forum live broadcast, the headlines exploded again, but this time, they were far worse than before. Marla stormed into Keanu's apartment, her face pale. "You need to see this now." She set her laptop on the table and hit play. The video looked like it had been shot on a hidden camera. It showed Keanu and Stallone sitting in what looked like a dimly lit bar. Their faces were clear, their voices audible. In the clip, Stallone leaned forward and said, "The public doesn't need to know the real reason we're here." Then, Keanu replied, "As long as we play our parts, they'll never find out." It was damning. It looked real. But it wasn't. "This is fake," Marla said quickly. "I ran the audio through a filter. Parts of it are spliced from old interviews you both did years ago. Somebody made this to look like you're working together on some hidden agenda." Keanu stared at the screen, calm on the outside, but feeling a cold weight in his chest. And people will believe it. They already did. By the time evening came, millions had watched the video. News outlets were running with it. Commentators were dissecting it. Hashtags like #Reeves Stallone conspiracy were trending worldwide. Across the city, Stallone was in his gym when Frankie handed him his phone. "You're in trouble, Sly? Look." At this, Stallone's reaction was instant. "That's fake. I've never been in that room, and those aren't my words." But the damage was done. Messages poured into his accounts, some angry, some accusing, some threatening. That night, Keanu called Stallone directly. "You saw it?" "Yeah, and I know what this is," Stallone said. "It's a play to split us apart. We start pointing fingers at each other, they win." "Then we don't," Keanu replied. "We stand together. We speak together, live. No edits, no cuts." Stallone was quiet for a moment. "You're sure about that? Because if we do this, we're both going to be bigger targets than we already are." "We already are," Keanu said simply. They agreed to appear on a neutral platform, a live stream that couldn't be delayed or altered by network executives. The announcement went out the next morning. Within hours, the hype was building. Some people expected an apology. Others expected a fight. But there were others hidden, waiting, who saw this as their chance to end both men's credibility. For good Maria, the former crisis counselor who had once stood on stage with Keanu and Clint Eastwood, called Keanu privately. "I'm hearing things," she said. "If you go live, they're going to try to hijack the feed again. Only this time, they'll make it look like you're admitting to everything." Keanu's voice was steady. "And we don't just go live, we go prepared." He and Stallone began planning in secret, setting up backup feeds, independent camera, crews, and off-site servers. But the closer they got to the date, the more the threats escalated. Emails, phone calls, even strangers waiting near their homes. On the morning of the broadcast, Marla looked at Keanu and said quietly, "Once you step in front of that camera, there's no going back." Keanu gave a small nod. "I'm not going back anyway." And as evening fell, with millions waiting to watch, the stage was set, not for a polite discussion, but for the most dangerous and unpredictable confrontation of their lives. This was only the beginning. The night of the live stream arrived, and the air felt electric charged with the weight of everything that had happened. Keanu and Stallone sat side by side in a small studio they had chosen themselves, away from network control, away from any corporate oversight. 3 independent cameras were set up, each feeding to separate encrypted servers. Marla oversaw one. In the corner, headset on, monitoring for any interference. Across the world, millions tuned in. Chat feeds lit up with comments moving so fast they were impossible to read. Some were supportive, others mocking, but all were watching. Stallone leaned toward the mic first. "Let's get this straight. That video you saw of me and Keanu? Fake? Cut and spliced to make it look like we were plotting something. We weren't. We've never had any secret deal. And if you don't believe me, you don't have to, but at least hear the truth from my mouth before you decide." Keanu followed, his voice calm but firm. "We've been accused of a lot in the past few weeks. Weakness, dishonesty, being part of some hidden agenda. The truth is simpler. We spoke about what we believe about strength, kindness, and humanity. Someone decided that was too dangerous to let stand. So they tried to twist it, to turn us against each other and to turn you against us. The chat exploded, but before they could continue, one of the backup monitors flickered. Marla's voice cut through their earpieces. They're trying to breach the feed. Server 2 is being hit. Stallone looked at Keanu, his jaw tightening. You called it. Keanu didn't flinch. Switch to the off-site link. Marla's fingers flew over the controls. For a brief second, the screen that viewers saw split into static, but then the feed returned, clear and uninterrupted. Keanu leaned forward, looking straight into the camera. To whoever's trying to shut this down, you've already failed. Because even if you cut this stream, we'll find another way to speak. You can't stop an idea once it's in the world. Stallone's voice rumbled beside him. You think you can scare us into silence? Wrong, guys. The two men began speaking directly to the viewers, not just defending themselves, but urging people to question what they were told, to look past edited clips and manufactured outrage. They shared their own stories of being manipulated by the industry. Times they had been pressured to play a role off screen as much as on. Then Keanu's voice softened. He said, if you've been listening to all this chaos and wondering who's right, maybe the answer isn't about taking sides. Maybe it's about not letting yourself be used by people who thrive on keeping you divided. A long silence followed, and then the live chat slowed for the first time. Messages began appearing, one after another. I believe you. This changes everything. We're with you. Just as the broadcast was wrapping up, Marla's monitor pinged again. This time, it wasn't an attack. It was a private incoming message from an unknown source. She read it, her face tightening. Keanu, she said quietly, it's not over. They know where you'll be next week. Stallone heard it too. Guess so. The fight's moving off camera. Keanu gave a faint smile. Then we'll be ready there too. The feed ended, but the ripple had already started. The video spread faster than any of their critics could contain it, and for the first time, it felt like the tide might be turning. But deep down, I think all knew this wasn't the end. It was the first battle in a war neither of them had asked for, but both were now determined to finish. This was only the beginning.